Two counterparts on here with me, Esther and Judy, and our wonderful director, Aaron, is on here as well. So for those of you that have been with us on our journey through our CE events, this is our third one, and we appreciate you so much. And so today, we will be doing our Black Women's and Girls Mental Health Matters. Those of you that attended the Black Men's Mental Health Matters gave us feedback on wanting to hear about women and girls, which is also super important. So we asked our wonderful Natasha Mullen to speak for us on that this morning. And so this is going to be a super informative, amazing 2 hours that you will enjoy. And so I will go ahead and introduce Miss Natasha Mullen, who is a licensed professional counselor. She is a licensed master social worker and approved clinical supervisor. She has a master's degree in education and hundreds of hours as a trainer, educator, and clinical counseling. She has over 20 years of experience as a mental health practitioner and nearly a decade in clinical administrator. She has spent over 7 years teaching counseling and education courses as an adjunct professional for Wilmington University. Her expertise includes trauma attachment, anxiety, and depression with children, adolescent and families within various settings, including home, school, and communities. She is certified in Delaware as a trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist and highly trained in EMDR. I'm sure most of you know what that is. If not, it's movement desensitization. As well as cognitive behavioral therapy. Natasha has conducted various trainings and seminars across the state of Delaware for nonprofit organizations, schools, and community agencies. Currently, she owns and leads a private practice in Sussex and Kent County, Delaware, which provides outpatient therapy, school-based counseling, telehealth therapy, and she started a Practice Makes Perfect resource, which is a consultant group for private practitioners who collaborate to discuss mental health trends, ethics, legalities, counseling topics, and clinical business intelligence. Natasha has always been very active in her community. In 2004, she started a program titled Unique to help young ladies develop self-esteem, leadership, and social skills. Even today, Natasha continues to support through her unique initiative and newly founded program Impact, leadership program designed for boys and girls. Through her grassroots community work, she recognized with numerous awards and media attention, including Essence Magazine, Washington Post, and the Jefferson Award. Ms. Natasha Mullen is happily married to Dr. Julius Mullen, who we love, and has 4 wonderful children, Julius Jr., Jawan, Jasmine, and Jayla, and 4 awesome grandchildren. So with no further ado, I introduce to you guys Miss Natasha Mullen.
Hello, hello, hello. I see so many people that I know. It's so great to see so many friends. Oh my goodness. So thank you so much for supporting me. I want to go ahead and jump in because I know that we don't have a lot of time, and I tried to condense like several different trainings into one to make this happen. But I do want to say, once again, thanks for attending, and Son, thank you definitely for having me. But I'm going to also kind of jump right in. Okay. This is me jumping right in. Sorry. Okay. And so I've created this, I guess I'll call it my modality as Arise. And I use Arise with the clinicians I supervise. I use Arise even with my clients. And I'm actually even thinking about using Arise with my unique group once we start back going face to face. But basically for Arise, it's basically awareness, recognize, being intentional, self-care, and educate. So what we're going to be doing today, what we're going to be learning today is Arise, increasing awareness of prevalence and impact of mental health problems and traumatic experiences in African-American girls and women, recognize the impact of past experiences and toxic stress on African-American women and girls' brains and behavioral responses, ways to be intentional to create a safe place for African-American women and girls to manage mental health challenges and psychological adversity, importance of teaching and practicing self-care to prevent re-traumatizing African-American women and girls and ourselves vicarious trauma. And then lastly, the importance to educate our clients, our family, and communities what we've learned. And so, like I said, I use this in incorporating in every kind of facet, because I truly believe that we first need to be aware, which is the education, and then recognizing kind of how it affects us day to day, and then on to being very intentional about making some changes. And then, of course, self-care and education is always important. And so I'll start off with this poem. You call me rude because I correct you when you call me the wrong name. And when I consider your slick remarks as disrespectful instead of a game. I set the way I do because I've seen a lot of things. I hear more about my gender, my race, and my looks than I've seen drops of rain. Always feeling devalued and invisible and all the negativity being a Black girl brings. So I raise my voice to be heard because I know what it's like to be dismissed, ignored, and silenced. I snatch my head because it's my body's response to the seriousness of my words. I'm not easily offended, but easily triggered. And I have to protect that little Black girl in me at all costs. That little Black girl who feels she's not good enough, feels unsafe, and fears being a failure. That girl who spent most of her life feeling like she wasn't in control. I have to protect her now that I can. So see, I'm not aggressive. I'm not this angry Black female who wants to cause harm. What you see is how I control my outcome, my safety, and my body. I'm not dramatic. My life's been traumatic. And so I like that poem because once again, it represents, it represents how we, I made a mistake here. I like this because it represents kind of how a lot of the Black girls and Black women are viewed. They're viewed as being these angry Black women, or they're viewed as being too loud, too white, too dark, too grown, too scary. She's too hot, she's too fast, she's too aggressive. She's got an attitude. And so I shared that poem because sometimes we're viewed in those lights based off of how we present ourselves. And that's what we're going to talk a lot today about, how Black girls and Black women present themselves sometimes, or how we respond more so. And so one of the things that I do in Unique early on is we do this thing called Because I Am. And what it states is, just because I am, and it could be a woman, or it could be I'm Black, or just because I'm old or whatever, I am not. And the reason I use the activity is because it really teaches them about stereotypes. And there's so many different stereotypes that we deal with. And so I like it because it really shows them kind of how they view themselves, or how they think other people view them. So first, let's just kind of check in. And I want to pause this for just a second. Hold on. I'm sorry, I can't find something here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so first I just want to kind of check in. And I want you to kind of think about what your thoughts were when you were thinking about coming to this training. Like, was it, oh God, here we go, another training? Or was it, oh no, I'm really interested, I want to learn something, maybe it can be helpful. Maybe it is, I already know this stuff. But whatever it is, I just want you to kind of think, because one of the things that is important in the work that we do is we're constantly checking in to how we feel. We're constantly checking in for what comes up for us. So I want you to just just for a moment. I know we're probably doing emails and we got phone calls to make and we've got all of these things. Everything has to be done yesterday. I get it. But for just a moment, we're talking about awareness, and awareness starts in our own bodies. And I want you to just for a moment, focus on your own body and just notice what comes up for you. Notice any tension, any concerns you have, any apprehension about what we're going to discuss. Maybe a little worried about, oh, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? But just kind of notice in your body what you're feeling right now. And just take some slight deep breaths. Maybe first, just kind of an in and out. Kind of creating that safe space to be okay to feel however you feel in this moment. No shoulda, couldas, but just feeling how you feel in this moment. Because that's what we want the people that we work with. We want them to be in a safe place where they can feel how they feel, not how we think they should feel. So in this moment, just notice how you feel. And if you want to put some feedback in the chat, that would be great. Just notice how you're feeling this Thursday morning. Are you able to see any comments?
Yes, so the good ones we've got on here. Excited. I didn't realize how much I needed to stop the busy and breathe. Relaxed. Hopeful. At the moment, feeling excited about the information. Excited. I feel really good. I hope to be able to share whatever I learn. Peace of mind. Good. I'm just open to this experience. Good, peaceful, relaxed, and in a safe place. Eager, ready to learn. I feel welcomed and emotional for today's session. Relaxed, hopeful to learn, encouraged and blessed. So far, a calm day. Looking forward to learning something new. Being open to have more in my toolbox. I am so excited for this training, but it wasn't until you said breathe that I realized I was holding emotionally. Empowered for the ones I support. I woke up tense, but find it is lessening the more you talk. I'm excited about this topic to help students. A little stressed, but looking forward to this. Let's see. Open to experience. So excited to hear my mom share her knowledge. Is your daughter on here? Yeah. Being relaxed to help curb the stress. Excited to be able to pass this on to those around me. And there's a whole bunch more. There's 31 more on there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so, yeah. And so the key, like I said, what we first want to work with, whoever we're working with, the key first is awareness. And sometimes it just takes us to just kind of slow down and be aware of kind of what is going on. So I'm going to start with just some statistics about mental health in our Black females. As you can see there, for so long in our communities, there was no such thing as depression, especially with our women. We just kind of shut up and put up, you know. Even now when I talk to my clients and I'll say, do you have any family history of depression? Most of the time the answer is, well, I suspect that they did, but we didn't talk about those kind of things. We didn't share those kind of things. Like, I expect that my parents had anxiety, but we didn't talk about those things. Those things were taboo because we were taught, you just better be glad you have a job. You just be glad you have a place under a roof over your head. Like, you just shut up and you keep moving. But as you see, we are starting to recognize that no, my husband talked about Black men, about a month ago, and here we're talking about women, and you can see that no, Black women, black girls are struggling as well. We're struggling with suicide. The rates have went up, especially during the pandemic. It went up 50% during the pandemic. Suicide attempts. The thoughts of suicide have increased. What is very interesting about women in general is women in general are depressed twice as much as men. But what is interesting about Black women is they're less likely to seek support. They're less likely to get counseling. They're less likely to even talk to people to get help. So that's one of the significant differences about Black women mental health is we've been taught to just keep moving, just keep going. You're okay, suck it up, put your big girl pants on. I know one of my clients used to say, her mom used to say, you don't have time to cry. We'll cry later. Right now we need to just, and so we've learned this way of living. And so we have to also remember about trauma and how trauma affects us. And we know that trauma plays a big part in our responses, in our current status. So if we're depressed, if we're anxious, 9 times out of 10, there's some type of traumatic experience in the history. And it doesn't always necessarily need to be homelessness or domestic violence or abuse. It could be what we call those little T's, like being bullied or feeling the black sheep in your family, or, you know, like I said, being told not to cry. One of course, the biggest parts that we deal with is the attachment piece. And one of the reasons, and I always tell my husband, like, I felt that attachment is one of the hardest types of trauma, because the two people that were supposed to raise you, they're supposed to show you the world, they're supposed to teach you how to trust and how to love, how to take care of yourself, how to care for your family. Those people, when they're not in the picture, for whatever reason, it causes a significant amount of trust. It also shapes how we look at the world. It also shapes how we look at the world. And so we know that ACEs, and I know you've kind of heard ACEs out of the wahoo by now. We know that the ACEs cause a lot of physical symptoms. I'm not really going to get into a lot of that. We know it causes blood pressure and all of these different things. I'm not really going to get into that as much as the day-to-day effects and the day-to-day responses, the responses that you see in your families, the responses that you see where you work, or where your kids go to school, or whatever facets in church that you attend to. We're going to talk more about the day-to-day type trauma. And so one of the things we have to realize about trauma is that it's stored in our body. And so even though the situation has happened in the past, it is stored in our body. The fragments, the memories, the images, the body sensations are stored in our body. But what's also good to remember is they're also passed down. So if my ancestors experienced slavery, their responses, those fragments and images, and is passed down. It's passed down through genetics, through the culture and the way that we're raised, our family structures, how our families celebrate or not celebrate, or our family's fears and experiences. Those things are passed down through biochemistry of the egg, sperm, and womb. So even before we're born, there's trauma kind of carried in our blood. And it's really important to remember that, especially now during COVID times, because this is a traumatic experience. It may not be to the extent of slavery, but it causes great fear. It makes us fearful of people. It makes us fearful of, we can't get too close. They're going to make me sick. We've had a lot of loss. So COVID is a major traumatic experience. So when you're, say, 2 years from now and you cough, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Like, we're going to carry those memories in our body. I also, if you think about like 9/11, and they did a lot of studies on those children and their children's children, and just the effects of how really early on, some of those anxiety and depressive symptoms are even though those children weren't in the experience, that are passed down to their children. And so we have to remember that it's not just about what's going on now that you're seeing, the response that you're seeing, because people will say, oh, well, slavery was a long time ago, but those conditions that have shaped the attitudes, the mindsets, the fears, the experience is passed down through words, through or whatever. My grandfather said, you can't trust politicians. I have a very hard time with that now, because that was how I was raised. That was what he was taught. And so that was that replay that kind of plays out in my mind. And some of the things that you've heard in your home or your parents have heard in their homes, those things get passed down. And that's why it's so important that sometimes we have to look at historical trauma and generational trauma. Some people call it generational curses, generational trauma, as it's passed down to us. And so let's be more specific to our girls and women and the ACEs. And so we know that for 54% of our African-American girls and women experience psychological abuse, 40% physical, and 17% sexual. 6 in 10 African-American girls are reported being coerced into sexual contact before the age of 18. 1 in 4 African-American girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18. And African-American women are 3 times more likely to be murdered by men that they know. And what's interesting about this is, and it's very important, this is what has been reported. Now, if you remember what I told you before, we have been taught, keep it moving, suck it up, don't worry about it. We'll just keep you away from uncle whoever or pastor whoever. So just think about what the true numbers could be if it was reported. One of the things that I read, it says 1 out of 15 rapes are actually reported. So that just gives you an idea of how much information we don't know. We don't know. Another thing about the ACEs for our girls and women is that if you think about the George Floyd situation, we carry a lot of stress about other people that we love. So when that situation happened, when this murder happened, we had women who were worried about their sons and their husbands and their nephews and their friends. And you had young ladies. I remember having a unique group, and they were so worried about their brothers and their cousins and their dads. And, and so once again, being traumatized with that same emotion of fear, Now remember, it's already passed down in our genes about fear, and then being re-traumatized with the messages that we're hearing on the news and everything that was going on social media. I had to take a break from social media during that time, but everything going on in social media. And then also, along with the ACEs of our girls, and I mentioned this a little bit before, we're dealing with the racism. We're dealing with colorism. So even within our own culture, this, you're too white, you talk too white, or you're too black, you're too dark complected, or, I wrote this down, this thing where white is white, brown stay around, black stay back. Like, these were the messages that we heard in our homes. Once again, if you're thinking about taking all of this in, that's a lot to take in. When you're raised, even in your home, you're raised sometimes that you're not good enough, or just keep quiet, don't start trouble, don't, just kind of go along with it, even in our homes. Or our men may treat us like we're not good enough, or our coaches or people that we respect. So we're dealing with racism, colorism, we're dealing with sexism, classism, homophobia. We're either too black, too white, too aggressive. We're penalized for our body shape, which is another big one. You know, you could have, because of the way that we're figured, sometimes the things that we wear that on other races that don't look the same. And sometimes, I read this book, Push Out, where that really offends girls because they could have on almost identical outfits, but they'd be singled out. Once again, too grown, too fast, too hot, too promiscuous. And so we want to also keep those in mind because these are how we look at things. These are how we look at things. I always hear people say, oh, she's too grown. She's too fast. And so we want to be really mindful of what we say and how we view things and how it impacts our children. You can have two children side by side and one will say, oh, she's so beautiful. Well, they're both beautiful. And it's so important that we recognize the messages that we're sending. And so this is all, once again, all about awareness of what our young people, our women. I'm working with 40, 50-year-old women that are still dealing with those experiences of, because she's smart, she was viewed as too white, so she was bullied. Or because she was dark complected, she was excluded. And so we want to just recognize how those things affect the people that we work with, the people that we're trying to support, the people that are like, oh my gosh, every time I turn around, she's got something going on. She's so dramatic. And so I'm going to stop right here just to see if we do have any questions or any comments so
We have
far.
some comments. Yes, we have some comments. One of them is, let's see here, from Rolanda. She said she had a book suggestion called My Grandmother's Hands by
My grandmother's hands.
Mennekin.
Right.
And
Right
then,
here.
there you go. I would say that person is very in sync with what you are doing right now.
Absolutely.
And then Michael Bell is from the Wilmington Housing Authority, and he commented, in Wilmington Housing Authority housing, 87% of households are led by women. Where are the men? We definitely need to be more supportive of our women. Mm-hmm. He also says poverty and a lack of affordable housing are major challenges. And then you also have a comment from Elisa Emanuel, powerful and real, speaking to all the experiences that we get externally from family, friends, and society. We have one more question. We have a question from Amy Parsons. She says, may I ask who wrote the poem that you shared at the beginning?
I wrote the poem.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm still working on it, but yeah, I wanted to capture what my young ladies experience and what they tell me. So yeah, I wrote the poem.
So, Natasha, can we share that poem?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to remind everyone, if you hopped on a few minutes after, if you haven't already, go ahead and put your name in the chat so that we can make sure that we get you a certificate. We will also post a survey link once we are finished with everything so that you can get that filled out, and we will get your certificate sent to you so that you can get your credits.
Yeah. And since people are putting books in the chat, The Body Keeps Score is another great book. And also, when I'm talking about inherited trauma, it didn't start with you. These are all great books talking about trauma, how's trauma stored in the body. It didn't start with you, talks a lot about inherited family trauma. So is that everything? And so once again, we just want to do just a quick check-in. Once again, because that's a lot of information. And what we do, even as professionals, we just take things in and we keep going. I know with Sessions, my consultant, because I'm trying to get certified in EMDR, and she always says, Tasha, you need to do something between sessions. because you're doing all this trauma work and we're not checking in and we're not realizing how these things make us feel. We just go to the next person. We just go to the next case. So just for a moment, we talked about a lot of heavy stuff there. And I know I'm talking fast just because of the time, but it's important for us not just to move past this. Check in with yourself and how you're feeling right now. Notice if it's something that triggered you, something that you might need to do to take care of yourself. Maybe it was anger, or maybe it was, or maybe it was a tense or stress. Just notice in your body, because your body always tells you. Just notice any tension in your body. Just take a deep breath and relax it. Just noticing that you're okay and you're in a safe space to feel how you feel and think how you think. No one's judging. No one's saying you should feel a certain way. But just being okay with all of that information. Because it is upsetting. And it may make you feel like we should do more, we should do more. And that's great. But in this moment, we want to be able to take care of ourselves. My girl, when you look at this picture, what comes to mind? And you can put it in the chat if you feel comfortable. What emotions come up for you? What thoughts run through your mind when you see this picture? Anything come up for you in your body? Do you notice any tension or tightness? What comes up for you when you see this picture? And you can put it in the chat if you feel comfortable. Do y'all have the chat?
Leah, do you want to talk through the comments in there?
Sure. I see who did it. Confident, defensive, sassy, strong. She is not happy. She looks guarded and sad. She looks hurt. Protective, defensive, weary, confident. I am ready for change. Protective stance, had enough nonsense. Strong-willed, confidence, lots of defiant. Strong-willed, guarded. Let's see, there's defensive, protecting self, lots of confident.
Mm-hmm.
Don't dare me. I'm in a defensive, hurt posture. Lots of defensive and guarded. Someone said pissed off, ready to disagree, and put own point across.
Very good, very good, very good. And so what is interesting is there's so many different views about this young lady. You know, some were saying confident, some were saying angry, some were saying, oh, not again, oh no. But what is interesting is the way we view different things is based off of our own experience. And so our perception, our lens that we look through, that we kind of monitor, or we're kind of aware of our world, the world around us, people around us, situations, how we kind of explore situations, or we view situations or observe situations, whether they're safe or they're not safe, is based off of our lens. And so it's interesting that some people had so many different views about this same picture, because it creates different things in us. It creates different things through our lens. And so we also want to keep that in mind when we're working with people, especially our African-American girls and women, because a lot of things that we see are coming through our lens and not necessarily their experience. And so I would be remiss if I don't talk about the brain, because my husband would have a fit. He's the brain guy. But what is interesting about, and I'm just going to go briefly through this. What is interesting about our experiences or stress just in general? So we can just talk about trauma, or we can talk about stress as a whole. What happens is the way it affects our brain, it blocks some of those things that causes decision-making, self-understanding, control of our emotions. And I'm learning a lot about this vagus nerve. And if any of you don't know it, it kind of runs from the back of the back part of your brain all the way through your body, through your lungs, your heart, your ears, your throat, your digestive, all the way to your digestive system. And so I'm learning a lot about this, because this is kind of the regulator of this stuff. This vagus nerve, you might hear about polyvagal therapy. This vagus nerve is what is responding when we are stressed. This vagus nerve is what shuts down. This vagus nerve is what creates our heartbeat or shortens our breath. And so when we're in this, what, as we say, upstairs, downstairs response, when we're under a lot of stress, our body responds. Our body responds. Our heart races. Sometimes if you notice, you feel queasy in your stomach when you're stressed, or you may have pain. That's that vagus nerve working. And so I'm really learning a lot more about it. But your vagus nerve is what's responding for that fight, flight, or freeze. And you can see the stem of it kind of going down, and it goes all the way down, like I said, through your organs, all the way to your stomach. And so when we're responding to stress, this nerve is really what's being activated, especially if we're triggered. And so once again, we know that the brain looks different when we're under a great amount of stress or toxic stress, as opposed to if we're not. And we know that stress also it impacts our executive functioning. So if we're thinking about thinking before acting, that's going out the window. We're usually very impulsive when we're a lot of stress. We have a hard time coping. And you can tell when someone, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but when people's stress level has overcame their ability to cope, that's when you start to see different behaviors, different responses. Our ability to express our feelings and thoughts. You know, it's so interesting because a lot of my clients, they'll tell you, logically, it makes so much sense to not do this or to do this. Like logically, it makes so much sense. But our emotions kick in, and it's not that easy to say no, or it's not that easy to push ourselves. And sometimes in counseling, that's what we do a lot of, talking about the thinking part of us and the feeling part of us, the emotional part of us, and how sometimes it's a battle between the two. What I think I should be doing and what I feel. And so, and also planning ahead and remembering information. So when we're, and it's so interesting because when we're in a great amount of anxiety, we usually can't remember stuff. Like, oh God, how could I forget that? And the person said, well, I have a lot going on. And so that just shows you that executive functioning has been affected because of the amount of stress. So the basic life skills, and that's why sometimes it's hard for us to just say, to talk our way through it. If I'm really angry, or if you have a really angry person in front of you, trying to talk logic is not going to work. It's just not going to work because they're not there. They're not using that part of the brain. They're completely using that vagus nerve. They're completely using that emotional part of the brain, whether it's anger or usually it's out of fear. And then one last thing. So when you're looking at sometimes some of the responses that you see from some of our African-American females, you'll see some of these things are challenged. They may not look motivated. They may look lazy. They may look like they don't care. They have a hard time. I did a group, was it 2 weeks ago? And them girls had me like, oh my gosh, because there is somebody said something and then they're arguing and they don't get along, And so, they have a hard time resolving conflict, because especially if they've been disrespected. Now, once again, and I'm gonna talk about this again, when you've had periods of your life where you felt disrespected, that is a major trigger for you. So it's so hard to resolve a conflict when she talked to someone about me, or she embarrassed me, or she's whatever. It's really hard for us to use that logical thinking to resolve an issue. And then, of course, planning and organizing is difficult. And we talked a little bit about managing fear. So once again, it's not, oh, she's just doing this. Literally, if you look at the brain difference, not even capable in some instances, not even capable to think that through. Sometimes it's just like full speed ahead. And so really quickly, just trying to keep y'all involved here so it's not just me all the time. I want you to really think about a time where you overreacted. We're not going to get you to share it or anything, but just a time where you felt that your response to a situation was like way over the top, or maybe it didn't match. Maybe it was just you kind of clocked out completely. And everybody's like, I notice that sometimes when people experience grief, they're like, she seems like she's okay. But we just kind of clock out. We kind of zone out. I want you to think about that situation and really think about what happened. But most importantly, not exactly the what, because the what is not really the important. What is important is, why did it bother you so much? Because usually it's not the what. Usually we've been triggered. And as I talked before about how trauma kind of stores in our body, and we have these images and these memories and these thoughts. And when they're triggered, sometimes we don't even realize it, but we respond. And so what people see is that response. And sometimes that response can be shut down. If I have someone that brings two siblings to me and they're saying, well, this is the one, he's acting out, he's doing all this, and he's out of control or whatever. And they say, but he's quiet. Then I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm just as worried about the one that's quiet as I am the one who's acting out. Because the one who's quiet is probably disconnecting. They may be disassociating, or they're doing whatever they can in their capability to just hold it together. And so we want to look at, when we think about ourselves, and I love this term, it's not, when we respond in a way where it's kind of like so over the top, the saying is, if it's hysterical, it's historical. That means it's not coming from a place here and now. It's coming from a historical place. It's coming from a historical place. It's coming from something, some image, some thought, some body response in the past that now I'm responding to. Okay. Did they have any in the chat about the over response? Or should I keep moving? I'm trying to keep an eye on time.
Looks like we have knee-jerk response.
I'm sorry?
Knee-jerk response.
Reject?
Knee-jerk response. Like your knee.
Oh, okay. Okay. Uh-huh.
That's all I see. Someone said, Cole Brooks said, feeling attacked or blindsided.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the biggest thing, the easiest way to notice that is you're like, when somebody responds, you're like, well, all I said was, or like, why did she, overreact? Because all that happened was, or whatever. And it's so interesting. I don't know if y'all watch Sweet Magnolias, but I love Sweet Magnolias. But anyway, one of the things that she said, unfortunately, you push the buttons that my husband installed. And I thought that was so interesting and a great description of trauma and triggers, because sometimes people trigger us, they push our buttons, not even realizing that that's what they're doing. We just see the response, or we just respond, and not even realizing that this is what happened. So once again, if the response doesn't match the situation, chances are the person's been triggered. It's not hysterical, it's historical.
Looks like
It's,
association.
I'm sorry?
Disassociation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like someone said, from an old wound, I always say the angrier a person is, the more hurt they are. We have some Heather Headley fans from Sweet Magnolias. Someone said, wow. And then we have, it helps to have compassion for people, even my difficult sister.
Absolutely. 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 And so I'll go on. So once again, I need to revisit this because it kind of plays into what I'm going into next. So we talked about these different fragments. In therapy, I'm starting to do a lot of parts work where these parts of us kind of record, or these fragments of us have recorded situations in the past, have recorded different things that people said, that gym teacher that laughed at me because I jammed my thumb, or whatever. Like, those different experiences are kind of recorded in our body, and it replays over and over again. And so because of that, it affects the way we feel about ourselves. It affects the way we look at others. I had a client the other day, she said, I told you that's why I don't trust people, because something that had happened with someone that was close to her. And so once again, it affects the way we view the people around us. It creates this fight, flight, or freeze mode. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this small. Where we can be very defensive, or we can be an overprotective parent. If something happened to me when I was younger, I may be very overprotective. I may not let my kids do certain things or go certain places or whatever. Or once again, that aggressive adolescent, because now I've been triggered and I need to respond. And if you think about that poem, that was one of the parts about that poem about
significant.
When things happen, sometimes we respond.
Sufficiently great or important to be worthy of attention, noteworthy.
I think somebody might need to mute. Thank you. But anyway, and so we're remembering that trauma is stuck in our bodies, and that's really what we do a lot in counseling is kind of getting that unstuckness. Not that the memory is gone, but the great emotions, the thoughts, the images are desensitized. So if you think about these movies, these things that constantly play over in my mind, like I can't trust anyone, or everybody's kind of got it out for me, or whatever it is, naturally, when someone does something or something happens that triggers that, the response is, like you said, hysterical, as we'll say. The response is hysterical. And the thing about it is, once again, that vagus nerve is so responsive. It's not thinking logically like, okay, in this moment, I am safe. I am okay. It thinks, wait a minute, we have to respond here. We have to do something. We cannot get hurt again. We cannot feel embarrassed again. We need to act. And a lot of times that's what we see. We see the action part of it because it's the most noticeable part. I just want to make sure I covered everything that I wanted to say here. Just one last thing, but this is kind of repetitive, but sometimes when we are triggered, it's almost like ripping off that Band-Aid and exposing that wound, exposing that sore. And so our body responds as if the event is happening again. And we are in danger, we are out of control, or we are unsafe. And so I want to talk a little bit about the negative thoughts that go along with this. So once again, I am unsafe. I am not in control. I am helpless. It's my fault. I am not smart enough. I am not good enough. What's wrong with me? So if we're walking around with these things, these thoughts about ourselves, if something was happened to trigger that, of course, we respond. And that's kind of like, especially with African-American girls, that's sometimes what we see when we see the bullying, the aggressiveness, the quick, as we say, quick to get an attitude. Sometimes we joke about it, but they stay ready. But think about the why. Why do I have to stay ready? Why do I have to be so hyper vigilant about my environment? Why do I have to second guess what she said? Was it slick? Was it a microaggression? Or was it her just making a joke? Like, why am I have to be so in tune? Because I have to protect myself. And it's not like we say, okay, she did this, so now I'm going to do that. If we had time to think that through, then, problem solved. The thing is, there's not that thinking. It's she did that. My body responds. That's why sometimes when you ask kids, like, why did you do that? They really don't know. I talk with teachers about that all the time when I'm training teachers, like some of them really don't know why they did it. Sometimes it's just such an emotional or impulsive response that there's not any thinking logic behind it. And so once again, if we're going back to the trauma experiences, and if you're thinking of this is the way I think, and I don't want to feel this way. I don't ever want to feel like I'm not in control again. I don't want to ever feel like I'm not safe, or I don't want to ever be in a position where I feel helpless. And so because of that feeling, we create some defenses. Not we sit down and plan them out. It's automatic. We go into these survival modes of functioning. And so that's what I want to talk about now, because you see some of these you might see in yourself, you might see in your children, you might see in the people you work with, some of your congregation. Like, you may see this because we all have these things. But I'm going to go more in depth to our African-American African-American girls and women. So let's look at this. So if drama is a response from fear and worry from past experiences, so what is the fears? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being hurt physically or emotionally, fear of being out of control. Maybe one time I got in a fight and I got arrested. So now I don't ever want to feel that out of control again. And so I'll just keep quiet. Whatever they say, I'm just going to let them say. I don't want to look like that angry Black woman. And so, or maybe it's other situations where there's abuse where you felt like you couldn't control the situation. The fear of being alone. A lot of times, when we talk about like, why doesn't this woman leave him, or why doesn't she? There is a tremendous fear of being alone, especially if you have attachment issues. Especially if you didn't have that father and you've always dreamed of having this perfect family. And so now I'm going to work so hard to make this happen. I don't want to leave. I don't want to. And then the biggest thing is I don't want to ever feel this way again. So and if I was younger and I felt like I was a failure, or if I felt like I was not smart enough, I may develop certain skills. I'll call them skills, survival skills. We call them managers, to prevent that feeling. Oh, sorry. How do I go back? Previous. Is that where I'm at? Yeah. So once again, we develop these defense mechanisms, these protectors. And remember, these protectors are to prevent what? They're to prevent these thoughts, these fears. We don't ever want to feel this way again. We don't ever want to feel like we're not good enough. We don't want to ever feel like we're not safe or we're not in control. So we develop these manners, these ways of being. And overcompensating, being really organized, too organized, needing to be prepared. These people do not like surprises. People who had trouble with control when they were younger, or felt that they were invisible, or their feelings were dismissed, they do not like surprises. They like to have some type of control. They like to know what to expect. They don't like uncertainty. Sometimes you'll see perfectionism. They have to be perfect. They have to have things a certain way. They have to be a certain way. And then, so we work really hard to prevent those feelings, those stress, those fears. But what happens when they're triggered? When they're triggered, we go into the fighting mode. That's where you see the fighting, shutting down, binge eating, drinking, smoking, sex, procrastination, lashing out. Those are the firefighters. So now I've been triggered. I worked really hard to prevent it, but now I've been triggered. Now I've been pushed out of that window of tolerance. We'll talk about that a little bit. And so now you see that firefighter. And much like anything with a firefighter, their goal is to go in instantly and make you feel better. The goal is to go in and put the fire out. Even though it causes some damage, everything's wet, everything's ruined. So naturally with firefighters, usually the person feels a little worse afterwards. But if we look at ourselves, we have managers. I notice my managers when I'm going on a trip. I'm packing the smallest, craziest stuff, Q-tips and safety pins. And should I wear this? Or should I bring an extra jacket? Maybe I should bring a sweater. Like to go on a weekend, I have a full suitcase of stuff. I don't like to not be prepared. One of my stress responses, when I am stressed or overwhelmed, I procrastinate. I put it off. I'm cleaning my desk. I'm watching Netflix. I'm looking on or Facebook. Procrastination, because I'm getting overwhelmed. Stress is overwhelming me. And so my mind and body saying, okay, we're clocking out of this. This is too much. We're clocking out. Let's watch Netflix. I see this medical student and she's got this perfect schedule about how she studies and she's got this perfect, I study this, I did everything. She even schedules fun time. But when she starts to get overwhelmed, binge watching Netflix for a day. And then which causes her to be more stressed, of course, but she's behind So sometimes what may seem as lazy, there may be some other things. Sometimes what we see is not being motivated. It could be that fear of failure, that fear of not trying and then being disappointed, that fear of not letting people down. You have some people that work at the other end, they overcompensate, they got to get straight A's. I remember I used to teach at Wilmington, and this girl gave me the hardest time about this A-. I'm like, just enough already, but she just had to get an A, just had to get an A. Oh my gosh. And it's just like this overcompensating, this for what? Because it helps me with that fear of being a failure. The same thing as me clocking out and not doing anything. It helps me with that fear of being a failure. Two totally different responses, but the same reason. The same reason. And so, as we're going along, one of the things I love about what I try to do in my trainings is I want us to see us. Because sometimes, even though the behaviors we see seem so over the top, a lot of the stuff we kind of do ourselves. Maybe not to that extent, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe not. But we have our managers. We have our firefighters. My Amazon, I'm like, just like every day. When COVID hit, and I was stressed out, every single day there was a package coming. Oh yeah, I need this. Oh yeah, I've been looking for that. Oh yeah, just constantly, once again, taking care of myself in that moment. And then I'm looking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I spent that much money on Amazon this month. So we want to recognize as well, because we can be helpful to other people when we can see it and we can experience it, and it makes sense to us. And so that's what I'm hoping to do is hoping to make more sense about sometimes what you see and what you experience, like what's kind of going on behind the scenes. And I also have here, it's just important for us to recognize our own stuff and why we respond the way we do. And it also helps us with the people we work with, our clients, our family members, as well. And so now I want to go back to our African-American women and girls specifically. And so this is what I call our managers, but I created personalities for them. And so one, of course, that stands out, this is probably the top one. Most of my clients are super women. They excel in everything they do. They're usually really highly educated, the doctorate degrees and all of this, or medical degrees, or nurses, or whatever they are. And there's no letdown for them. Like they keep going. Okay, this is next. This is next. This is next. I got one of the things about it, and it seems really awesome, but for these women, they have a really hard time letting people know what they're dealing with. They just push it aside. They minimize it. Like I was saying earlier, when the lady said, we don't have time to cry. It's almost like put your big girl pants on and get moving. They're the super women. They're the ones that everybody comes to. There's the ones in your churches that always says, yes, I'll do it. The ones you can always depend on. Great qualities. Once again, the ones will always come through. But they always put themselves last. Once again, why is a need for me to be a super woman? Why is it a need for me to be there for everyone else? Is it that fear of failure? Is it that fear of some point where you were out of control? Is it that need to people please? I'll go to the next one. Maybe it's that fear of rejection. I don't want to tell people no because then they'll maybe push away from me, or I don't want to disappoint people. That the angry Black woman that, oh no, you're not today. Not today, you're not. That aggressive, they come off really strong. Once again, if I've had periods of my time when I felt minimized or disrespected or invisible, when I'm triggered, you may get that response. You may get that response. And deep down, it's usually out of fear. And one of my clients said the other day, like, you come at me, I'm coming at you. Before you come at me, I'm coming at you. I'm not going to give you a chance. Once again, I'm in survival mode. I'm in survival mode. Drama queen, always got things going. It's a distraction from myself and what I feel about myself. I'm in this mess. I'm getting this going. I'm instigating that. You know, stuff's just going all over the place and my name is always in it. Overcompensating, we talked about that high achiever, got to excel in everything. The ones, in class, oh man, when I used to teach, it was always those ones. Well, have you read no, haven't read it, haven't heard of it. Would you like to do a paper on it to bring me up to speed? But it's always those ones. Once again, what is it? It's that fear of failure. Maybe that fear of rejection, maybe that fear at some point in their life where they didn't have control of what was going on in their home. And so that was something they could control. They couldn't control their grades and how well they did in school or how well they did in sports or how much they went, weight lift or exercise, like just doing more and doing more and doing more. Defensive guard, I had mentioned earlier, when some people say they feel like they're very hyper vigilant. They're always on defense. They're always waiting for someone to say or do or like they're always on guard. Like I said before with the young lady saying, I'm always ready. I stay ready. Busy bee. Sorry. Busy bee. Now I notice these a lot, especially when things are really high stress. They just stay busy. And that's one thing that COVID did. COVID slowed everybody down where they had no choice but to deal with some of the things that we've been avoiding. They had no choice to deal with some of those thoughts, some of those memories, some of those things that came up for them. Because usually what we do, we go from this thing to that thing. We go from that thing to what's next. After I get this degree, I'll get that degree. And after I get this job, I'll get this promotion. And then when I get home, I'll cook, I'll clean, I'll fall across the bed exhausted, and then I'll fall asleep. And then tomorrow I'll get up and we'll do it all again. Jezebel, I put that in. That's the promiscuous stereotype that some have, where once again, where is it coming from? That fear of rejection, that fear of I'm going to control this situation, unlike what happened when I was younger, when maybe someone controlled me. I call the shots kind of thing. We talked about the avoider and the procrastinator. That's me. That's my personality. I get it done, but I put things off to the last minute sometimes. Victim. I run into them in the store. We're kind of having this whole conversation about their whole life story. Once again, what is underneath for that? Maybe when they were young, they didn't have a voice. Or maybe that was the way they did have a voice. Maybe they told stories about, what had happened and what they were dealing with. Maybe they were so used to people catering to them or feeling sorry for them that's kind of, how they manage through the world as what has happened to me kind of thing. Foreboding joy. I get this from Brene Brown because I love it. I don't know if she created it or what, but I stole it from her. But it's that fear of being too happy. I notice with a lot of my clients, it's like they don't want to get too happy when things are going good because they're expecting something bad is going to happen next. So even when good things happen, they're already thinking they don't want to let their guard down too much. They want to be prepared for when that bad thing happens. They want to make sure that They're on guard. They don't want to let their guard down too much. They still need to be hyper vigilant. This person, he seems really nice, but oh, he said that one thing, so I might need to leave him alone. It's almost like they're waiting for that bad thing to happen. So it makes it really hard for them to enjoy the moment. You know, a lot of people, when I ask them about their degrees, oh yeah, I got this degree, but then next fall, can we just focus on what you earned for a moment? Can we just focus on that? Can we take that in instead of the next thing and the next thing? And so that for Bo and Joyce is, oh, I just can't stop. I can't let my guard down. I just gotta keep moving. I gotta be prepared. I gotta be prepared. You know, I maybe overextend myself just so this won't happen. You know, the great debater, it could be also considered as defensive guard, but that's one that always got something to say. Always, anything that you say, they challenge it. I want you to know I'm smarter than you. I know more than you. I read more books than you. I have this knowledge. And once again, it's similar to overcompensating. You know, that it's always that one that just has to share. You know, if you got a little blue, then they got a big giant blue. If you went to Disney World one day, they went 5 days. And once again, what are these behaviors? And then the competitor. And what's interesting about this one, I just recently added this one because it really didn't fit the other ones in the sense that we're always told, especially in the Black community, that we compete against each other, that we don't want anyone to get more than what we have. And so the competitor, once again, it comes again from that feeling of failure, and that fear of failure, that fear of someone doing more than me, and what that makes me feel like. And I'll tell you, one of the things social media has done, it has really created a lot of depression and anxiety, because people naturally have this mindset. I mean, we all do. You know, if I'm at work and I'm looking at somebody with pictures in Hawaii, I mean, I'm going to feel some type of way. I'm glad you're there, but I want to be there too. But sometimes with social media, it can inundate us so much that one of the things I tell my clients when we first start, hey, you got to take a break from social media and the news. We got to cut this off, because you're constantly in that mindset of competition, and it's not helping you. It's not helping your depression. It's not helping your anxiety. So these are some of the managing personalities. One of the things that I had in my notes that I didn't say, the busy bee, just one more thing about that one, it's almost like move, so I don't have to feel. And you'll notice it, like I notice it when I hear about grief, or when someone has passed away. You have that one, they jump in, they're coordinating everything, they're taking, you okay? Yeah, I gotta keep moving, I gotta call, gotta set up this repast, gotta, and they're just moving. Because the more I move, the more I stay busy, I don't have to feel what I'm dealing with. I don't have to feel what's kind of going on with me. And so, yeah, so that's, and so once again, I still go back to, I have to go back to, once again, what are the reasons? What is underneath the behaviors? So that's not an error. I did put that in twice. So if you're thinking about African-American women who have constantly felt, once again, with the racism and colorism, and constantly felt like they weren't heard or seen, invisible, or taken advantage of, whether it's abuse or sexual assault, where they felt like they were out of control or helpless, or they blamed themselves for what has happened to them. Once again, it comes out in some of those managing behaviors. And then also, I had to include those firefighters, those ways that it's just too much. It's just too overwhelming for me to manage through it with all of those managers. And so you have the different firefighter. And like I said, we all have this, but some people, it's so ingrained in them that they can't even separate the other parts of them from these parts. And so I just want to briefly, because I don't think that I could definitely talk about this without sharing this. So when we're thinking about the window of tolerance, and the window of tolerance is kind of your ability to kind of cope with whatever's happening right now. Whatever's happening in this moment, your ability to cope. And we know that some people have a really high window of tolerance. You know, wives always complain about their husbands. They're like, they act like nothing doesn't bother him. Meanwhile, I'm going crazy. Or you could have a very low window of tolerance. And so some of the times the behaviors, once again, that you see from some of our African-American women and girls come from, they have a very short window of tolerance. We understand why now. We understand what plays into it, but that's kind of what causes that anger, that out of control, those impulsive responses, or that numbing, that zoning out. And so in counseling, what we hope to do is to increase that window of tolerance with our African-American women and children, so that they're not as reactive when they're triggered, or when they have a memory, or when someone says something. They're not as reactive. They're able to use their skills to be able to de-escalate themselves, or not to get so far escalated that they are kind of unmanageable, or, you know, like sometimes they truly feel like they did something and did not have control. I had many clients say, I just blacked out when I was fighting. I just blacked out. Like, I don't even know what happened. And sometimes I think they're trying to get in trouble, but sometimes I also think that that's true. I think it's pretty accurate. I think they completely lose it because they're just so amped up and so angry and so overwhelmed in that moment. They're dysregulated, no logical thinking getting in there. And that's another thing. I use this slide a lot with teachers, because once again, when they're out of those window of tolerance, there's no logical thinking. They don't care about consequences. You know, oh, you're going to lose this, or you're going to lose that, or what about the trip? Like, when they're out of that window and their coping skills, or whatever they're doing, their survival skills aren't working, it's really hard for them to make good decisions. And so talking to them logically is not going to be helpful. Okay, so let's stop there for a moment and let's do a check-in. A lot of information once again.
We have a comment in the chat. I think a few people have had to jump off to go to other meetings or what have you, but we have a comment in the chat that says, from Eve, as a healthcare provider for women, this has been one of the best conferences I have ever attended. So helpful conversations regarding Black, brown women and girls. God bless you. Oh, thank you. That was
awesome.
Thank you so much. And Becca Loren said, me too.
Awesome.
This is very educational. This is great information. Thank you for this great presentation. So thank you all so much. I'm glad you are all enjoying this. This is super robust and excellent information. That's why we had her come. And then I just want to remind you all, Judy did put it in the chat, but I just will let you know that slides will be provided with the certificate, and certificates will be emailed out a few days after the survey is completed, which will be put in the chat after the presentation. All can get the poem as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yes, awesome. That's good stuff. And so one of the things that we want to do next is, once again, hold on. We want to check in, because I'm going really, really fast, because like I said, I'm trying to get a lot of information in at once. We want to check in. And so now we're on being intentional. And we always want to say, so what should we do? So how should we help? So how can we help these young ladies? So I want you to just think for a moment yourself. I want you to just pay attention to your normal breathing. And I want you to think about someone that you trust. Someone you feel comfortable with. Maybe you feel comfortable talking to them. Maybe you just like being in their presence. What is it about that person? What is it about that person that makes you feel safe? What is it about that person that makes you trust them? What are their qualities? If you could just put a couple of comments in the chat, that would be great. What are their qualities? What is it about them? Do one of you want to read the comments?
I can, if you can hear me. There's so many: authentic, understanding they have a spirit of comfort, accepting, non-judgmental, understanding. Loyalty, I have so many here. Loyalty, honesty, empathetic. They don't give unsolicited advice. Always actively listening. Listens well, sincerity, a great listener, kind spirit, compassion, non-judgmental, no judgment, peaceful tones, great at responding appropriately, validating my feelings. They validate my feelings and clarify boundaries. Love unconditionally, does not judge. I can be free to express myself with any judgment. And there's many more.
You want to know how to help? There's your answers. Helping someone feel like you can be trusted, that you are in their corner. We just list what our ladies need, what our women need. We know what causes their behavior. We know where it comes from. We know how they respond. And if we want to know how we help them, we go within. What do we need? We need genuineness. We need trustworthy. We need non-judgmental. Someone that gives me advice, but in a sense that it's not making me feel bad about something that I did. We need encouragement, someone that makes us feel good, something. And so when we're working with women, especially African American girls and women who have been treated in various aspects throughout their life differently from that, we have to work a little harder to let them know that we're a trustworthy person. And it doesn't matter the race. I could sit in front of a Black girl and she could still look at me like, I don't care nothing about what you got to say. I don't care who you are. We have to do the work. We have to do the work to create that environment where they feel safe. I'm going to read this another poem. The other side of the desk. Have you ever thought just a wee little bit of how it would seem to be a misfit and how you would feel if you had to sit on the other side of the desk? Have you ever looked at a man who seemed like a bum as he sat before you, nervous and dumb, and thought of the courage it took to come to the other side of the desk? Have you thought to yourself of her dreams that went astray, of the hard real facts of her everyday, of the things in her life that make her stay on the other side of the desk? Have you thought to yourself, it could be I, if the good things of life had passed me by, and maybe I'd bluster and maybe I'd lie from the other side of the desk? Did you make her feel she was full of greed, make her ashamed of her race or creed? Or did you reach out to her in her need to the other side of the desk? May God give us wisdom and lots of it, and much compassion and plenty of grit, so that we can be kinder to those who sit on the other side of the desk. And I didn't write that one. Actually, I don't know who wrote it. It's anonymous. But isn't that powerful? Isn't that powerful? If we could just be empathetic, if we could just be empathetic, and it goes right into my first one of being seen. You know, if we could just be empathetic, if we could just look through someone else's eyes, not look at the behavior, not look at what we see, what they're giving us, that attitude, that, no, miss, but truly try to be empathetic and put ourselves in their shoes. Sensing the managers behind the behavior. Stan Siegel calls it mind sight. If they've had periods of time where they felt like they weren't noticed, they weren't seen, they weren't validated, they weren't important, they were the black sheep of the family. I forgot to say, I had one of my unique girls, and I'll never forget it. She was a bully. Oh my gosh, she would beat up boys, girls. It didn't matter. I think she would beat up a teacher if you would let her. And one of the things, me and her had a heart-to-heart talk, and she said, you know what, miss, from kindergarten to third grade, I was bullied. I was bullied. My hair was too short. I was too dark. I was too skinny. At that time, I was too skinny. And she said, but when I got in fourth grade, I decided never again, never again, never again. And so she started being really mean. She started fighting all over the place. She got that reputation of fighting. And she got a lot of a stout for that. She got a reputation. Like, I mean, people would think it was negative, but it was a positive reputation. People wanted to be her friend because they felt like, she gets fighting. She's got my back. So it's hard to tell someone to give up something that makes them feel good about themselves. And we're looking like, how could fighting, but once again, because we're looking through our lens. And so we want to be empathetic. We want to non-judgmental. I hope that was one of the comments. I think it was non-judgmental, but help them to be seen. I hear you. I'll tell you a secret. I used to have teachers come in and they would say, Miss Mullen, you need to talk to her because she's doing da 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 da. And we would get in that office and we talk about something completely different. Don't tell them I said that. Because I couldn't go there with her. She was way out of her window of tolerance. And so what I needed to do was to let her know, hey, I see you. I hear you. I remember I had one client when I used to walk in the classroom, this was years ago, I used to say, I couldn't even talk to her. And we would have to walk around the track because she was so angry and she had so much reason to be angry. If you knew her story, she had so much of a reason to be angry. And then we would walk and we would walk. And then she'd say, no, miss, but, and then she would start telling me what happened. But I had to be there with her. I had to be present. I had to understand what she needed in that moment. She didn't need me to say, now, you know, you shouldn't have been cussing your teacher out, throwing chairs. She didn't need that in that moment. She knows all that. She needed me to be in the moment with her and to just be in present, be present with her. The next thing is safety. Being mindful that what I say and what I do is not causing more harm. That I'm not escalating the situation. And sometimes I see professionals that, and for whatever reason, I get it, you know, they it's like a power thing for them. No, you're not going to talk to me like, you're not going to, and it's like a power thing. And you got to understand, for some Black female, oh, it's on. This is what I'm used to. Oh, you want to go word for word? I do this on a daily. We can go back and forth. So you have to remember that you want to talk slower and lower. You don't want to match what they're giving you. If you're trying to get them out of the window of tolerance. Now, if you're trying to escalate them, then that's how you do it. But if you're really trying to calm them down, you're wanting to create a safe environment for them. I'm going to talk lower. I'm going to talk slower. I'm not going to talk all this, oh, you're going to get in trouble. You keep this up. You just wait. You're losing points, sister. You're going to be suspended, detention. You're out of here. I had to work with DFS parents about that. Like, don't say they're out, because that's what they're used to. They're trying to make that happen anyway. They're just waiting for you to say the word, because you're just like every other DFS parent. So go ahead and say it and get it over with. So don't say I'm out if I act up, because I'm going to give you what you're looking for. But if you create in that safe environment, that here is a place when you're in this room with me, or when you're wherever with me, you are safe. I will not cause you harm. I will not say things that will hurt you or minimize you or degrade you or put you down. The next one is soothing. This is the same thing for 2- and 3-year-olds, right? I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you need to tell me. I want to hear your emotions, your feelings. I'm not going to say, oh, you shouldn't think that way. Oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Well, all they were trying to do was this. All they said to you was that. I'm creating a space where you feel comfortable. You said genuineness. I'm being genuine. I'm being empathetic. I'm nodding. I get it. I get how angry you are right now. I remember when parents used to come in schools and they used to come and get me to talk to these parents, because these parents better tear up something. And the first thing I say is, man, I get it. I mean, I understand why you're so angry. Because they probably do have a right. They might not have a right for the response, but they probably do have a right to be so as angry as they are. So I go right in with, man, I get it. You're really angry right now. And so I'm going in with this warmness, with this genuineness. I'm working on connecting This very hard person that I'm telling you, with my, especially with telehealth, them that first initial sessions, they're so difficult because you're trying to connect over video. And the first thing I'll say, especially to my teenagers, I'll say, you know, I don't want you to ever feel like you have to tell me anything. You can always say, no, I don't want to talk about that now. So I'm giving them that control. I'm letting them know that they're completely in control. And usually when I do that, that's when I get everything. Especially when it comes to trauma. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to, and I get that. And I always let them know, I don't care who brought you in here. We don't ever have to talk about something that you don't want to talk about. Because once again, I'm creating an environment of safety where you're in control. I'm trying to go through. I want to make sure I have enough time. Okay. And so then the last one is security. And once again, with secure, we're talking about building up, encouraging, making them feel good about who they are, their own well-being. I'm going to walk beside you. I'm not this expert because I got all these initials and I'm a doctor this or L this, or they don't care. They could care less. They could care less about your initials. I am here for you. We're going to walk through this together. I'm focusing on your strengths. I'm focusing on empowerment. I'm focusing on your struggle. I'm creating, once again, a secure space, but not only a secure, not only a safe space, but a place where you feel good about who you are. Who you are. Kids come down there all the time, and man, they got some really serious stories about some things that people say to them, adults that say to them. And I'm like, wow. And so now I have to work on building you up. That's what I'm saying internally. I have to work on building you back up. I have to work on connecting and improving a relationship with an adult because you just had a bad situation with an adult and you already don't trust adults and you're already expecting a bad experience with adult. And now someone has triggered this. And now I'm in front of you trying to say, here I am, another adult, and I'm trying to help you be secure. I'm not going to cause harm. I'm going to keep you safe. You have a right to be angry. You have a right to be sad. You have a right to be upset. And so just some more things with being intentional is we also have to recognize our stuff. We have to recognize we talked before about our own triggers, our own managers, our own firefighters, because let's be real, sometimes the people that are sitting on the other side of the desk can trigger some stuff in us. And so we want to be very aware of our own stuff. We want to be very aware of our own feelings, our own thoughts. Not that we're going to impose them on this person, but we want to ensure that we're doing what I said earlier, that we're creating this safety, this security, that they're being seen and heard, and that their stuff is not being minimized because we think this way or we think that way. Acknowledge what has happened in history, not minimizing what the experiences have been. Recognizing and learning more about the effects of trauma in the brain and the effects of generational trauma. The key is awareness. The key is understanding. I can relate more, not because I've experienced it, but at least I understand it. I don't have to experience it, but I understand where you're coming from. I understand why that has made you so angry or why you responded in the way that you did. Prepare for triggering situations. A lot of my clients can't deal with loud noises. So if it's someone who's hollering, that could be a trigger. Standing behind someone could be a trigger, especially if they're used to being hit from behind. Standing over someone could be a trigger. Being mindful of triggering situations. You won't know them all. You definitely won't know them all, but I just gave you 3 right off the bat. And then the last one is inviting uncomfortable conversations. I'm meeting with a lot of clients now from other countries, and some of the stuff that they tell me, I just don't get. Like, it's just so hard for me to believe. But I have to increase my knowledge because I don't want them to ever make them feel that my way is the right way, the way I do things are the right way, and because your family doesn't do these things, that it's the wrong way. Having conversations so I learn more, so that I can be a better person, so I show up in our sessions, or I show up in our meetings, I show up when I'm at your home or when I'm at your school. The full me is present. Got to move on, sorry. And this, once again, is an increase in our education about trauma responses. We talked a little bit about it. There's a lot more about how our body responds, potential triggers, expressing feelings of grief, disappointment, allowing, but once again, a safe space to vent, creating an environment where they can vent. And of course, teaching coping skills. That's the number one thing. I teach all of my clients to meditate. I teach them tapping. There's a good book called Tapping In. I got it here, called Tapping In. I teach them tapping, once again, focusing on that vagus vein, but teaching coping skills, how to relax. I teach them about the brain and how the traumatic brain. I show them that. This is just not you going off thing. This is not you just fighting thing. This comes from somewhere. This comes deep within. And so this last one is, okay, so let's say, once again, I said, you might not know a trigger. It's impossible to know them all, right? It's impossible to know that what you said was going to offend that person. We are going to make mistakes. We're human. We're going to say the wrong thing. We're going to do the wrong thing. But it gives us an opportunity to learn, one, focus on how it made us feel, what comes to play for us when we screwed up and said that, and now she's flying on. I'll never forget, I got 3 girls together. I guess I was going to call myself doing an intervention. Oh my goodness, it was the worst idea in the world. They got the fussing, and I thought they were going to go to blows, and oh, they were so mean. And I was like, oh, you should have thought this through. You should have thought this through. We're going to make mistakes. But then what do? We give ourselves forgiveness. We show ourselves compassion, just like we're saying, show them compassion. We consult, we get help, we get support. One of the things that I do a lot in supervision is kind of, we talk about barriers, we talk about things that maybe we shouldn't have said or should have did, or maybe we should have did differently. Not in the sense of saying, no, 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 bad girl, but in the sense of saying, hey, mistakes happen. Let's learn. And I'll be honest, sometimes I learn more from my contractors and my part-time than they learn from me about different experiences. It's okay to consult. It's okay to say, you don't know this, or you might not know why this person got so angry, or you didn't realize that what you said was going to cause them to fly off the handle. And then you join and connect. That's the most important part. When you make a mistake, when you just don't avoid the person, you don't just avoid the situation, this is how you show. I screwed up. I should have never said. I should have never did. You join and you reconnect. That's what they're not used to. They're not used to they're used to, oh, I'm going to avoid her. I'm going to act like I don't see her. I hope she won't say anything to me. They're used to that. You being afraid. They're used to that. You have an opportunity. How can I improve this relationship now that I screwed up? How can I fix this? How can I attempt to make this right? We got to give ourselves a break. We're not going to be perfect with this thing. And then we create and we plan new ways to help once we've learned. Now I know. So for the future, I'll never do that again. I'll get each girl separately and figure out what's going on before I bring all three of them together. See if I can de-escalate them first, because that was a no-no, right? The biggest thing is you can't go by the behavior. I always say in supervision, because I learned well from my own supervisor, you have to get off the behavior. You can't go by the behavior you see. You have to get off the behavior. You have to go within. Where is this coming from? What fear is this behavior stemming from? What survival skills is this person using? What are they trying to prevent from happening? Are they keeping themselves safe? Is this the way of trying to maintain control? And then lastly, and I know we get sick of self-care, but it is important. It is so important. It is so important. Like I said, I'm doing consulting for EMDR, and my consultant says, Tasha, you got to take care of yourself. You can't be listening to this hard stuff. I had 4 sessions back to back that were like, whoa. How am I taking care of myself? How am I pouring back into myself? We cannot just say self-care as a cliche. It's not cliche. Just as we're teaching the people we work with, we should be also teaching our families, our kids. I teach my clients, teach your kids how to meditate. Y'all do it together. Y'all do yoga together. They need to learn. Start early with teaching them how to respond to stress. We have to be very mindful of what we do. We go from this person to that person. We hear that story, and then we do what we do there, and then we go to this story, and then we're working on this story, and then Our daughter's calling us and she's got a whole thing going on. And then you're back into with this client, then you're back with this client, and then your sister's calling you because, oh my God, what does your nephew did now? And you're just taking all this stuff in, and we're on. We have to practice self-care. We have to practice. We teach it, and we do it. We show the people we work with, we show our families, we show the people around us, and we do it for ourselves. It could be a walk. I always say, I don't smoke, but I take a smoke break. I go outside, get myself together, maybe walk. I got some smell goods, I spray. I got my sound stuff. I got my massage chair. I'm sitting in this ugly game chair, but it's so comfortable. I got my massager. I'm taking care of myself. We have to do this. You can't just keep going from one situation to a next, dealing with your stuff at home, dealing with your stuff at church or the community that you serve, and just keep moving. You hear about this stuff, you keep moving. You hear about this situation, you keep moving. She's lost somebody, you keep moving. We have to take care of ourselves. And we have to be very intentional about doing it, or it will not happen. And lastly, you've got some great information. I always teach my unique girls, I'm not just giving you this information for you. You have a bigger cause now. You have a bigger purpose now. You take your information and you share it. You educate. You educate the people around you. You educate your family. You educate your coworkers. This information is not just for you. It's to be shared. It's to be shared. That's how we change things. So lastly, when we are aware of our own triggers and fears and recognize how they affect our thoughts and feelings and responses, we can intentionally develop new ways to think, act, and feel, and create a self-care plan to make changes. After increasing knowledge of self, we can educate our clients, families, and our communities to help change generations. That's all I got.
Oh my goodness. Does anybody else feel like they just left the church service? Because I do. You know, when you have like 2% left on your phone and you're like, oh my gosh, where's my charger? And you plug it in and then you start getting juice. Like, that's totally how I feel right now. That was Latasha. Thank you so, so much. With all of these comments in the chat here, people are singing your praises, girl.
Awesome.
Presentation. Super enlightening. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Great job. Loved this. Everyone loves you. This was
awesome.
So I encourage all of you to go. Esther posted the link for your surveys to get your credits. Someone said this is the best CEU class I have had in 18 years. Thank you, Heather.
Hey.
And I will also encourage you all for next month in March. It's on March the 30th. If you aren't already a Sun Behavioral LinkedIn connection, I encourage you to do that. So we will have our next event in March, on March the 30th, and it will be how trauma plays a role, and it will be on co-occurring. So if you want more credits, just go ahead and stay tuned for the next few weeks. We will post the information on that. We will have these every month with different topics. So does anybody, let me see, let me go through her. Awesome. They're just singing your praises, girl.
I see it. That's awesome. I'm so glad. Does anyone have any questions?
Anybody have any questions before we go? appreciate each and every one of you spending 2 hours with us. I know your time is precious, and so I know you all probably have a million things to do, and so we greatly appreciate you. Fantastic. Yes, the poem will be shared. Someone said, how does it make you feel that you made everyone think differently this morning?
Awesome. 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 That was my goal, not only to think differently, but to share the information.
If I may, can I ask a question?
Sure.
My question happens to be about like mentoring programs that you would recommend, or curriculum that you would recommend for middle and high school schools in regards to helping out our young ladies.
Huh. Now that's interesting. So I use for my unique group, I use a lot of different programs. I use Girl Circle, I use Botman, I use this other one called Girls Leadership. So I use various different ones. I know Dr. Britt is on here. Do you want to share some?
Hi, and
Hi.
actually, there is a couple with the National Women's Law Center. I could be saying that wrong, but they have a specific area that works with girls of color, and they had a link that connected a curriculum that I actually shared with our student and family interventionist here at the Milford School District. And so, Nika, I'll send that link over to you, or maybe Leah, I'll share it with you, and maybe you can share out. But the ones that Tasha said are like the top ones as well. But I did find some recently that were specific to girls of color. And it was through the national law with Black girls. So I'll definitely share that. I'll try to drop the link. I'll try to drop the link here before we close if I can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And just a reminder, everyone ignore option 1 in the survey. Getting some questions that say, what does option 1 mean? Just ignore that. Any other questions?
Wow.
All right.
I have a
Well,
question.
Oh, okay.
How often, Natasha, are you sort of like pushing this knowledge into your team?
Into my team?
Out to your team, so they have all the same kind of reactions and pieces in their practice?
Do you mean my contractors, the ones that work for Milestones?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so what we do, so the platform Arise, I use in my individual supervision with them. We do group supervision. And then I also, like I said, I also teach my clients. So I use this in all facets. So we're constantly going over, we're constantly, like, if I would say, okay, so what phase are we working on? Okay, we're working on awareness. And so, or are we working on the actual treatment planning, which is more of an intentional. So yeah, so weekly basically is the answer. Either we're doing
that's awesome.
Yeah, we're doing individual or group weekly.
Amazing. So when my 16-year-old starts acting up, I'm calling Natasha.
Well, like I said, my team is also skilled because we do a lot of training, and a lot of trauma work. We do a lot of trauma work.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, I thank every single one of you for your time. Thank you so, so much. We greatly appreciate you and all that you do in your communities. And if there are any questions, you can submit them to us. We will answer them. And the certificates and all of the poems and information that you requested will be sent to you in the early part of next week. So thank you so much. Again, we're all available if you have questions. And we will see you next time. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was great, Taj.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Taj. Good luck. Thank you
Thank
so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Natasha. That was great.
Yes,
you,
it was.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.